Good evening, Facebook. Good evening, YouTube. Welcome to another Sunday evening session with Brian and Janice. It's so good to be back to you on this beautiful Sunday, late Sunday evening. I hope everybody's having a wonderful weekend. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Looking forward to a great week. As everyone knows, we are currently in a war. Not U.S. is part of it, but basically Palestine and Israel are in a conflict war. So tonight, Brian is going to tell us and break this down break it down for us and give us more dynamics on what this is all stemming from and how did we get here at this time. Okay, Brian?
All right. Well, good evening, Facebook family. Good evening, YouTube family. We were asked to give a brief summary of what's going on so that you would understand basically what's happening right now in the area we call the Middle East. So we're going to define some terms for you, and then I'm going to just kind of give you a good historical timeline as it relates to what we see happening now in Israel. So that you'll have a better understanding and you can kind of put some of the pieces together and then take some deep dives. I'll drop some, just some diamonds and pearls on you tonight to where you can actually go and do some research yourself. I got several books that I'm going to show you at the end of our broadcast tonight that you can also order that will help you to understand what's going on in the Middle East and Israel. So we want to preference this show by saying that war is the enemy of the poor. Quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
So whenever you have a conflict that arises, whether it be the poor here at home that's affected or the poor abroad.
Yes.
If you are part of that group that's impoverished, war just escalates poverty. So we do not espouse war for no reason at all. The humanitarian crisis that's looming right now due to this war is unparamount. I mean, there's not been a humanitarian crisis like this in over a half century. So this is a sad situation on all scales.
Yes.
And on both sides. So we just want to preference this show by saying that if innocent children are being killed, if innocent people are losing their lives, if innocent people are being targeted purposely to prove a point because there is a vendetta by either side, and they are using the civilian population to further the cause of a political agenda, we do not approve of it. And the United States government should not approve of it. But we know, on the contrary, that the United States government, and I'm going to show you this tonight, has been involved in every conflict that Israel has had since its inception in the country that we know now as Palestine, Israel, or over in the Middle East. Okay, so let's talk about any questions before I move on,
No,
Janice?
no.
Okay, so let's talk about some terms. I want to define some terms so that you understand when you hear these terms on mainstream media news, you'll know what they're talking about. The first term we want to define is the term Jew. You're going to hear that term probably for years. I would venture to say, and I hope it's not a long period of time, but you're going to hear that particular term in the mainstream media over and over. The floodgates are open for the actual word Jew. Okay? So what is a Jew? Do you know what a Jew is?
No, not in historian terms. I want to.
So just tell me, just in layman's terms, what do you when you hear the word Jew, what automatically comes to your mind?
Money. Another class of people with money.
That is a good answer. Okay, what else comes to mind? Does anything else besides money comes to mind? And you know what? That is well, I won't say unfortunately, because that's not unfortunately to be labeled, as being wealthy or having money. I think the unfortunate part is when money is not used in a constructive way, it is used in a destructive way. Okay. So, but anyway, any other words come to mind?
I've always thought Jews as black people.
Okay.
They were black. Okay,
Jews as black people, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. But whenever you hear the word Jew, the word Jew is simply defined as such. Jew is a person. A Jew is a person who practices Judaism. Okay? Okay. So there's a distinct designation or classification for a Jew. A Jew is a person that practices Judaism. In a broader sense, a Jew is a person that is one through descendancy related to the ancient Hebrews. Okay. That's in a broader sense. Okay. Okay. So when you said that you always thought Jews were black people.
Somebody else, my cousin Cassandra, thought they were too. She said she agreed. She thought they were black.
They were black people. Yeah. And you are exactly right. So whenever you look at the ancient Hebrews of the Bible that we see in Scripture were in fact black people. Okay? Now, here's the difference between the Jew of today that we see in Israel as opposed to the ancient people of the Bible that were called Hebrews. Jews today that are in Israel will never refer to themselves as Hebrew, because the word Hebrew in their concept and in their definition makes a connotation of one being black. Okay? Even though the word Hebrew actually means a person from across the river or the man from across the river. Okay, that's what the actual word means. Hebrew or Hebrew, what we call our English word Hebrew, means one from across the river. But so you will never hear a Jew, European Jew, refer to themselves as a Hebrew, simply because of the connotation of Hebrews being people of African descent. Okay? So the historical context of the word is not used in a sense of what we see today in Israel in the people group that occupies that land that calls themselves Jews. Okay? The people that occupy that land that calls themselves Jews today are simply people that have a religious practice where they practice what they refer to as Judaism. Okay? What is Judaism? Judaism is a practice based off of Toraic laws or the Torah laws, okay, that the Jews have actually gone in, modified, and created within that system and within that structure a principal religion that identifies and separates them from all other people group. Okay? Now, we can go into that, and I'll deal with that probably on the next show next week, as far as the religious aspect of the Jews and them actually creating what we know today as modern day Judaism. Okay? It is their religious practice that identifies them and separates them from all other people groups. Okay? But it is specifically for the European Jews that occupy the land of Israel today. Okay? All right? So let's define another term. Hebrew. Okay, what we were just talking about. Okay? So you believe, I basically defined Hebrew,
yes,
right?
You did.
So Hebrew is a person of African descent. It's the original people that occupied the landmass known as Israel today. Listen at this, and I want everybody to understand this that's listening. Israel, the land that we know as Israel, in the area that we call Palestine, in biblical times, that land was called Canaan.
Okay.
Canaan is the grandson of Ham. Okay? Those people were African people. They are of African descent. Okay? It borders Egypt. You can walk out of Africa, North Africa, which is Egypt, into Canaan, which is now Palestine, the Gaza Strip, what they call the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and the place that they have designated as Israel. Understand that in Scripture, there was no particular designation of that land being called Israel. Israel is the name of one of the ancestors, okay, that had his name changed. Jacob's name was changed to what? Israel.
Yes.
Okay, so Jacob 12 sons became the main occupants of North and Northeast Africa, the landmass that we call Jerusalem, Israel, Palestine, Gaza Strip, so on and so forth. Okay. Not only that, if you actually read in the scripture called the place prior to it being named Jerusalem, Jebus, which is also a descendant of Ham. The people called the Jebusites occupied that place that we call Jerusalem, and prior to it being called Jerusalem was called Jebus after the descendant of Ham. Okay? The people, again, were called Jebusites, and they were the African people that occupied what we know today, which the name was changed from Jebus to Jerusalem or Jeru. Okay? And we know that Salem simply means peace. Okay? So it became known as the place of peace, the city of peace. It was the place where the Jebus Salem, or the Salem, the Jerusalem occupied. We now call it Jerusalem. Okay? All right, so that's just some simple basic history on how some of these names came to be. The land of Canaan was known as a land that was resource rich.
Yes.
In the scriptures, it said it was a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay? Black people occupied that land. That was the territory of Northeast Africa. It is still the territory of Northeast Africa. Conveniently, it became known as part of the Middle East as European colonizers began to go in and to separate and divide parcels of Africa. Okay? Now, let's get into, all right, so does that define Hebrew?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Hopefully everybody is still with us on that. I don't want to go because we're going to deal with the religious context next week. But also, let's define another word that you're going to hear a whole lot as the mass media continues to talk about this conflict that's happening. The word Zionism.
Okay.
Okay.
What is that?
Zionism is a political national movement where people believe, or European Jews believed, in the creation of a state and the occupation of their own land in Palestine. Okay? Palestine has always been on the radar, and I'm going to explain to you all why. Okay? But prior to Palestine being on the radar, Uganda was the first country considered for the occupation of the German Jews to immigrate and to actually colonize, take over, and create a state that they call Israel. The reason that Uganda, which was colonized by the British monarchy, okay, so it's owned, came up under the authority and the rule of Britain. The reason that it was ruled out is because on either side it had its neighboring countries, Kenya and Tanzania, which we were at the Tanzania embassy in Washington, D.C. a week ago. You got both of those neighboring countries on either side, and it was landlocked in between those two countries. Okay. In between its brothers and sisters, really. Okay. Because we know that Kenya and even Tanzania both are creations of the European colonizers. Okay. But that's why they did not select Uganda. After they ruled out Uganda, okay, the British enters into an agreement with the German Jews. Okay, everybody, if you will, reference this, look this up. It is called the Havara document.
Havara document.
Okay, the Havara document or the Havara agreement. Now, this agreement is put into writing in 1933. Okay?
Okay.
So this is prior to World War II starting. The Havara Agreement of 1933 basically stated that an agreement between Nazi Germans, Great Britain, and some other European countries that stated that the Jews, the German Jews, which are your European Jews, the German Jews could immigrate into Palestine, which was British ruled, also British controlled, under the British monarchy, that they could immigrate into Palestine and that they could take all of their assets. Now watch this. Their assets, which were sold in Germany, they could take the money from their assets that were sold in Germany, relocate to Palestine. And at the time that all of this was going down, you still had all of your Palestinians at this time that was occupying that land. Okay. There was no Israel. Now remember, we're not talking about Israel. Okay. We're just talking about them occupying Palestine. So the agreement, the Havara agreement, is signed. The declaration is made that the Jews, the German Jews, would move into Palestine and occupy that land. The German Nazi Party enters into an agreement with some of the Zionist leaders of that day. Okay, and remember, Zionism, so a Zionist is someone that believed in the national and political movement to create a state of Israel. Okay, so you had Zionist leaders. You also had a Zionist Federation Bank. When they enter into agreement with the Nazi Party, they move all the assets, everything that's sold in Germany, they move those assets to Palestine, and they move over 60,000 Jews, German Jews, between the years of 1933, based off of this Havar agreement, and to 1939, they're migrating from Germany into Palestine. Okay. This is before, brothers and sisters, and you all need to understand this because this takes place before World War II and Adolf Hitler, okay, beginning his savage brutality on the German Jews that decided not to go. Okay, they decided that they were not going to leave their homeland, that Germany was also their land, and that they had a right to be there. So there were those German Jews that did not leave, but over 60,000 did. So at the time of the start of World War II, which was September the 1st, brothers and sisters, 1939, okay, from that time, there was over 60,000 plus Jews already in Palestine, occupying spaces and places in Palestine. Okay. Now, the Palestinians had reached an agreement with these German Jews that they would help out as far as the economy because they presented some ease to the economy by offering more labor. Okay, you had more people now, so now the production and the industrialization that was going on at that time in the Middle East, they could also play an integral part in bringing in more monies into the region. They played an integral part in trade and exporting. Okay, so those Jews that went over there prior to World War II, that sold their assets, they went over there already established monetarily. Okay.
Yes.
Because of the Zionist Federation Bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Money
so they had their assets and their monies, and at the same time they were building. Okay. Here's the downfall. One of the downfalls with the Palestinian people as it relates to the immigration from 1933 to 1939. When they entered into the agreement with these people, they trusted them too much. Okay? Because some of them that immigrated into the land were also Zionists and felt like they should have their own state separate from Palestine. Okay? Even though they were occupying Palestinian territory. Like I said, there was no country called Israel prior to 1948 in that region. Okay? So, any questions before we continue to
So why is it important for us to know this, to understand this? What benefit is this to Americans, African Americans that are in the U.S. today? What benefit is this to us? And why is it important for us to know this?
It's important to know this because the mainstream media, as it relates to America, tends to take sides and not tell the whole truth as it relates to the people of Palestine and the agreements that were entered into with European factions, okay, to allow the people group that we call the Jews now to even be over there. It was really an act of kindness on the Palestinians' part and the Palestinian leadership at that time, which we could talk about, okay, to enter into agreement and to allow these people to immigrate into that particular region. Now, the caveat there is it was still up under British rule. Okay, so the British government was the one that was the collaborating force between all parties, and particularly between Palestinians and the German Jews. Okay, so it's important to understand that because, like I said, in the United States, because the United States is a main supporter of the state of Israel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The United States itself is Zionist, meaning that they are supporters of the creation state that is known as Israel. Okay. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit now.
Okay.
1917, Woodrow Wilson agreed to what is called the Balfour document.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of the Balfour document. The Balfour document was a publication that was released by Zionists that pretty much pushed, prior to 1933, pushed the creation state of Israel and the occupation of Palestine. Okay? The four members that led the charge was Rothschild, Herzl, Skolem, and Durham. Those were the four main entities. And notice one name that everybody knows, Rothschild. Okay.
So they were the financial backers.
They were the financiers, and they were Zionists.
Zionists, yes.
Okay. So when we hear entertainers talking about Zionists ruling the entertainment arena and them having the money that controls that particular profession, okay, that's what they're talking about. Okay, wow. It is undergirded by Zionist money. So the Zionists have control over that particular industry. Okay, so go back. I encourage you all to look up the Balfour, Balfour. Okay, Alfred Balfour. You'll see that name. Do a deep dive on that. Look at that document. But that document, like I said, before 1933 in the Havara document, you had the Balfour document that sanctioned the actual immigration of the German Jews into Palestine. Now notice this. This is before World War I. All of this, as it relates to moving the German Jews out of Germany, happens prior to any wars. 1917, before World War I. 1933, before World War II. So the British, the European government, and the British monarchy at that time, also who the U.S. supported Woodrow Wilson, our president, in 1917, and then in 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, okay, somebody you like. Well, you like Theodore Roosevelt, but Franklin Delano Roosevelt also supports the Havara Agreement, just as Woodrow Wilson supports the Balfour Agreement. So the United States have always been a proponent, brothers and sisters, of supporting the Zionist movement in the creation of a state called Israel in the land of Palestine that was occupied by other people. Okay, that's why it's important to know really what's going on. Because like I said, it is sad that the United States demonizes the Palestinians. They talk about the Hamas group. Let me explain to you what Hamas is, okay? Hamas is a military faction that was developed apart from the Palestinian people. It is not part of the Palestinian people. That was developed apart from the Palestinian people, okay, to protect the Palestinian people from the oppressive and unequal treatment by the state of Israel. Okay, so I would have to do another show to go into the origin of Hamas and what they call, you're going to hear another word used, Hezbollah, okay, which borders Lebanon, and also some of that faction, military faction, also it reaches into Turkey. Okay, there's a whole different subject that we would have to deal with. And maybe I'll deal with just those two different factions. We can do a show on that as well. But we need to understand that Hamas was not intentionally and originally, okay, created as a terrorist organization just to attack Israel. That is not true. But that is what the United States media would make it seem like.
So basically, Hamas was a militant group, well, a military. I'm not going to say so much militant.
No, they were a militant. That is right. They're not a military.
Militant group to protect the Palestinian people from
the Palestinian
people from being abused.
Basically.
Okay.
That group formed because of the oppression by the state of Israel.
And it's a small area. It's not that big, is it?
No, it's not that big. I think they say
140 miles or so?
Something like that, the stretch. And that's from the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, into right now what we know as Palestine. Okay, you keep hearing on the news now about Israel invading the Gaza Strip. That is the most dense area of the Palestinian occupation. Now, what we do not see and what we fail to see is the two-state creation. Okay, where the Palestinians have free rights to govern themselves and to be a state just as Israel does. Okay, that is what the main issue is as it relates to this conflict. Okay, Israel doesn't become a state, is not declared a state until 1958, May 15th of 1958. It is sanctioned by the United Nations as it relates to their declaration of independence to become a free state in the territory and land that is occupied by Palestinians. Okay, so listen, the same old tricks, just in a different region. When we look at 1776, in the occupation of settlers in America coming in and taking the land of the natives and declaring themselves free and independent of the mother country, Great Britain at the time. You understand? The same script applies when you look at Israel from 1933 and possibly even earlier than that, based off of the Balfour document in 1917. When you look at the immigration from 1933 to 1939, and like I said, possibly earlier than that, German Jews, European Jews going into Palestine, being able to work, being accepted as a part of that particular region at the time. Okay, you had what they call the Yishuv that was already there. The Yishuv would be your Arab Jews. It's your non-white Jews, your black Jews. Okay, that is what they called them. They called them the Yishuv, or the non-European, okay, Jew. They were already there occupying that land in that territory. So in 1948, like I said, the state of Israel is created. The United Nations sanctions it. The United States, Great Britain, because that area is still governed, ruled up under the authority of the British monarchy. Okay, it is allowed for the state of Israel to basically become the United States of Israel in Palestine. Okay, so you have the United States, you have Great Britain, you have Europe, okay, and then you have even Germany after they lose in World War II to be supportive of this creation state, this Zionism movement that's taking place, okay? After the creation, about 6 months after, 7 months after, the first war of what we call the Israeli-Arab conflict happens between Israel and 5 Arab nations: Lebanon, Syria, Egypt. Let me see, who else was it, brothers and sisters? Let me reference my notes here. Iraq and Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt. Okay, those are the nations in 1948 that actually rises up against Israel, because even after the creation, there are agreements that are broken. Okay, and the Arab nations literally feel like the land that is being possessed, Israel is cutting off trade exports between Arab nations, that they would try to move into the further north, okay, which would be Lebanon, what they're talking about now. All of this was happening 7 months after the creation of the state of Israel.
Wow.
They are in conflict with the Arab nations. That's the first war of the Israeli-Arab conflict. Then the second war takes place in 1956, involving Egypt again. It is called the Suez War.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And then in 1967, you have the same conflict over occupation, over the mistreatment of Palestinians, over Israel trying to take control. Here again, the 1967 war was fought because they were trying to take control over the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank.
Yes.
The 1967 war lasts 5 days, and Israel defeats some of the Arab, and at that time they were called the United Arabs, 8 nations. Okay, Egypt was a part of that. Israel defeats the United Arab Nations, which Egypt is a part of that. Okay, and they seize the Gaza Strip in 1967. So this is what we're looking at, brothers and sisters. This is not a new war. Okay, I can go back even farther than that. I can take you back to the biblical, to those times in biblical history where there was a conflict between the Arab nations that occupied that strip of land and invaders that were trying to come in
and take over.
Yes. Okay. Now, so if you look at the Roman Empire, when it set up its hierarchy as it relates to Africa, it set it up in Jerusalem. Okay. So you had Roman occupation that was governing from the area that we call Jerusalem today. There was a European invader there. So it's always been European invasions in that particular region. Okay. So like I said, this is an old war when we talk about the Israeli-Arab conflict and the fight for the occupation of all of that region. Israel have broken many agreements, breaches of contracts throughout
history.
Every agreement that they have entered in with the Palestinian leadership has been a breach of contract, has been broken. You do not hear the mainstream media talk about that. Okay? You do not hear the mainstream media talking about the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, all of that was an agreement that was entered into that this would remain with the Palestinian people.
So really,
they would have somewhere also to continue their existence and also in formation of their own state.
Wow.
It has to be, if there's going to be peace, there can be no peace in that region without there being a two-state solution. Because now the Palestinian people are saying, we're not going to take it anymore. Okay, Israel is saying, we're going to literally wipe you off the face of the map.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
This is not the first time that Israel has said this. And what we see happening with Netanyahu, this is not the first time where he has, and let me say this. This is not the first time that we see an Israeli prime minister say that we're going to lay siege and we're going to wipe out everything in the region.
So, Brian, my question is, so they've broken an agreement by going back to take this land again. They've broken another agreement.
Yes, they every agreement that was entered into, they pretty much have it's been a breach of contract with the Palestinian people. So let me read this real quick.
And one more question. 140 miles. It's not very much.
That's right.
Those people are living stacked on top of each other. They're high rises next to high rises on top of high rises. I mean, literally, right? What is it so valuable about getting 140 miles? What is so valuable about that strip? They want the
whole region. So it's not the value, it is the land to continue. It is having the land to continue to grow the state of Israel in that area.
At the cost of children's lives?
Yes, because they want to become basically the main security force of the region. So, like I said, you have to look at Israel. Israel is simply the United States of Israel. Okay, so they want to be the bully in the area. Just like the United States is the bully all over the world. Okay, if we can't get your cooperation, we will exert our military force and power.
Exactly.
So that's the same thing you're looking at with Israel. They need more land to do that. Okay, so
140 miles would do that.
The 140 miles of acreage is a lot. Okay, you're not just thinking about.
But you got 2 million people living there, and
so that tells you that that's a lot. That tells you still that's a lot of land, because you can't stack 2 million people just in a little area like we're in. So think about that. That's 2 million people, so that's still a lot of land. Okay, So you don't think in terms of small just because they're saying it's the most condensed area. It's still a lot of land. Okay, so you're talking about 140 miles, and remember that geological miles are measured differently. Okay, so much differently from the normal mile. So we're not talking about a walking mile. Okay, you got to understand that.
Yes.
So when you're dealing with land and geography. Okay, but let me read this. This is what Golda Meir said. Okay, Prime Minister of Israel in 1969. She says in the London Times, there was no such thing as Palestinians. It was not as though they was Palestinian people and we came and threw them out. We took their country away from them. This is what she says. Now, this is a direct quote. They did not exist. It is true that the Palestinians didn't have a country in the sense that they were always victims to one imperial ruler or another, whether the Ottoman Empire of the Turks or Great Britain. Up to 1967, Palestine remained a pawn in the chess match of Arab diplomacy. Since then, the guerrilla movement has established the existence of the Palestinian nation. This is what she said. And no future settlement of the conflict will be possible without the accord of the Palestinian population. Now, listen, this is what I'm reading. I'm reading from this book, Palestine, the Arab-Israeli conflict. Okay, this is part one. Okay, there's two more books, and it gives you all the history, brothers and sisters.
I want to ask this question.
That's just one book I'm going to reference tonight.
Cassandra Stewart is watching,
okay.
And I don't know if I don't think she's back in the States yet. If she can hear me, she's military too, and I think she's pretty high ranking now. Cassandra, where are you stationed now? If you can hear me, will you just put that in and tell us where you are?
She asked a good question. Okay.
Yes.
She said, so why did Hamas slaughter
the people of Israel?
The people of Israel.
Okay, she's in Texas now. So
she's in Texas
now. All right.
The faction of Hamas. Okay. This is Brian's opinion. Let me preference that. Okay. This is from historical. This is my opinion. The faction of Hamas that launched the attack that weekend on those people in Israel. Okay.
Oh, she's at the border.
Okay. This is what happened. And this is my opinion, Sandra. That faction of Hamas, and it has now been proven, we have heard this on many broadcasts, was actually working in cooperation with some of the government of Israel to stage this attack. Also, here's another key indicator. She being military, me being former military. Okay? With government security clearances. Okay. Also, this is something that's not being talked about. The intelligence units of Israel are some of the most advanced, apart from the United States, in the world. And they did not detect this so-called sneak attack by Hamas. You know why? Because they were working in cooperation with it. Okay? They had to have someone to start the escalation. Now, you'll also see, Cassandra, this is also history with the creation of Hamas. There was an agreement that was entered into with Israel to create Hamas. Okay? So Hamas, even though it was a faction, became a faction to protect the Palestinian people and to rally for equal rights and trying to develop the state of Palestine. They entered into an agreement with Israel in their initial formations, okay, to work with Israel as a militia force watch this, in Palestine, to keep any uprisings from happening with the people in Palestine. So I won't go and do that research. I'm just throwing some pearls out there for you so you can take a little deep dive there. Okay? But it's very, very powerful. Now, if you listen to Al Jazeera News Network, you'll get the whole story. You can't listen to just MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. You got to go to Al Jazeera, listen to some of the networks from over in the Middle East. Al Jazeera literally came out and said
they did
that Israel corroborated the attack on that festival with the Hamas faction that they're fighting right now. And they questioned on Al Jazeera, they questioned some of the Israeli leadership, and they could not respond. So that's just throwing some pearls at you, Cassandra, so you can look that up. And like I said, we could go a little bit deeper into that, but I'm trying to keep it to where it's in layman's terms so everybody kind of get a sense of what's going on.
So in answer to her question, why did Hamas...
I just answered it, baby.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off of that.
Mm-hmm.
This was all designed. This was set up.
I believe it was staged. Okay. If you all notice, there's been no talk about Ukraine the last week and a half.
No. It's like it just went away.
But it's still there. And the funding, now because the attention has been drawn away from Ukraine, this war with Israel and Hamas, in my opinion, is setting up an invasion into Iran, which the United States, for some reason, have a over fascination with attacking Iran. Okay, the Iran nuclear deal that Obama signed when he was in office. We know Trump rescinded that.
Yes, he did.
Okay, and basically Trump said it was the worst deal in history. But we know that it factored peace. Now, Biden, here's where Democrats don't like to be honest with what's going on. Now Biden is pushing Trump's policies as it relates to Iran in reference to him rescinding the nuclear agreement that was entered into with Obama. Okay. Biden is actually pushing the Trump policy as it relates to Iran.
Nobody will admit to that.
No one will admit to that.
No one will admit to that.
Why Iran? Because Iran borders Saudi Arabia. Here you go with these United Arab nations. You got Saudi Arabia, you got Iran, you got the Emirates, Arab Emirates. Okay, you still you've got Lebanon that borders Israel. Okay, which really Lebanon is Africa.
Yes,
okay?
It is.
Then right on the other side of Lebanon, you got Morocco. You got the Moroccan Empire. So there's a lot going on here. And then, of course, I think I said Saudi Arabia. everyone knows right now what's going on with Saudi Arabia entering into negotiations and signing up with the BRICS nations.
Yes.
As it relates to the de-dollarization of oil. Yeah. Okay. So making the petrodollar go away and them supporting the creation of the BRICS having their own bank. Okay, right now. So all of this is political. It's unfortunately, when we can't have our way, like I said, we're the bullies of the world. We impose military force. I forget which one of my ancestors that said that the United States is the nation's police until it is policed. Okay, so when another nation tries to police us, we get in an uproar and we lose it. And we want to go impose ourselves. Okay.
Yes, we do.
So, you know, that's that. But any other questions on that? Okay. So I want to show you all this. I showed you the book here about the Israeli, but I want you, if you all can, get this book, The Invention of the Jewish People. This book, Hans Slomo, is a professor, retired professor emeritus out of Tel Aviv University. He writes and exposes everything. He talks about the creation of the Jewish people, the creation state of the Jewish people. He talks about how they use the story of the Hebrew people, who are African people, to garner empathy across the world as it relates to development of what we now know as the state of Israel. Okay, he says that the whole concept of Europeans calling themselves Jews is a creation and a fabrication. So get that book, and then I want to show you this. The 13th Tribe by Arthur Kessler. Okay, talks about the Khazarian and the Ashkenazi Jews. Those are your European factions of Jews. Okay, out of the European clans. Okay, Germany, Poland, Europe, Italy. Okay, you had the European, even in Spain, you had some European Jews. Okay, but if you get this book, it'll explain to you who the European, these so-called Jews that are European, it explains to you who they are. Okay, Arthur Kessler, the 13th Tribe, and then I want to show you one more book. Now, this one is kind of thick. I don't know if some of you all may read it, some you may not. By Paul Johnson, called A History of the Jews. Okay, anything and everything you want to know about the European creation of the Jews, who they are, why they garnered and fought so hard for a nation state. Okay, it talks about, he talks about the biblical context of how they took the story of the Hebrew people, even manufactured their own set of rules and rituals based off of the African concepts that were in place, okay, to form a religion that we call now today Judaism.
She said that's really thick. It is, Cassandra.
It's thick, but it's well worth the read. It may take you some time to read it, but read it. Okay, these are just some of the books. I got 2 whole sections in my library on just Jews and the Arab-Israeli conflict. Okay, so guys, I just pulled out a few books to share with you just to get you started if you really want to do this research. Okay. I love the research.
Yes,
it is wonderful. And you know, the funny thing is, and I'll share this, when this first kicked off, I told Janice the first night, this is what's happening.
Yes, yes.
And broke everything. And before they started saying anything in the news, I told, this is what's happening, baby.
Yes.
This is who Hamas is.
Yes.
This thing was staged. I said all of that before. The same day that it happened, we were talking about this. You know, guys, you know, it's hard to get just honest, raw facts, but that's what I'm gonna give you every time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really tell you what's really going on. And like I say, we could take even a deeper dive. I just wanted to scratch the surface and kind of give you some understanding. So when you hear certain terms, you know what they are, you know who they're speaking of, you know what is in relation to, things of that nature. To kind of help you to understand that this hasn't been a war that's just started. This war has been going on ever since there's been a creation state of Israel, and even prior to that, when the state was in formation by a certain group, okay, that's always been supportive of the political and national movement of Israel, okay? So, you know, just to try to give you some clarity on what we're actually looking at and what's happening over in that particular region today. So I'll stop right there. Hopefully that's enough information, and the books that I've shared, hopefully, you know, if you get those, it'll also bring some clarity on, you know, shed some light on what's going on as well.
Well, okay. So with the people, do you think they're going to be effective at totally demolishing Palestinians out of that strip this time? Is that the goal? Is that what they want to do this time?
The goal is genocide. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you exactly what the goal is. Now the goal is for Israel. The goal is not to preserve life. They violated just about every humanitarian law possible, according to the UN. Okay, and you've actually had the UN prime minister and leader to come out against what Israel is doing. The United States have not encouraged peace. We saw Anthony Blinken is over there, and he's traveling now to all of the Arab nations, if he hasn't already made his rounds. But he hasn't talked about a two-state solution. He's not talking about the atrocities and the violation of humanitarian law based off of the UN agreement. He hasn't talked about, discouraging the United States not to bomb civilians and kill thousands and millions of civilians. Okay, he hasn't encouraged it from either side. Okay, so basically, like I said, the United States right now is in support of what's going on. We're looking at the United States of Israel. Okay, that's basically and essentially what we're looking at. So they're not checking Israel as it relates to some of the humanitarian laws that are being violated, and we will not check them. Okay, so the whole thing now is take all of the land. Take all of the land. If you need a biblical reference, read the book of Job. Okay.
It says, do you think this war is a prophecy from the Bible?
I do. The book of Job, Sister Cassandra, and you'll see exactly what is happening. Okay? And we'll discuss that a little bit next week. So next week, we're going to talk about, by request, what did Sharon want us to talk about? We're going to talk about the African origins of Christianity in its relationship to Voodoo and some of the other African religions. So I'll cover some of that as well. I'll talk about the two brothers now that are warring. One of the brothers, I would say, that's warring against the faction of the invaders that have come in to occupy their land. But like I said, if you read the book of Joel, it explains a lot as it relates to what's happening. Joel.
Okay, Joel.
Joel. Yeah, read the book of Joel.
So that'll give her a lot of insight.
That'll give us some insight. And then, like I said, I'll deal with some of that biblical prophecy on next week as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cassandra.
All right, guys. Well, we thank you
appreciate you all.
Yes, we thank you all
for watching. And share this video with as many people as you can, because we need to know this. It is very important that we know this. Thank you, cuz. Love you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.